And we're pretty much good to go. Let's do it. Inspiration Nation, hello. Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast without Jose Noya, but I am with Ryan Boniface. It's one out the door, one in the door. How are we doing, Ryan?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am good too. I was going to say I'm glad to hear it, but I wouldn't answer your question. I am good too as well. We are doing some bulk recording today, as at least one of us is always out of the country at the moment for one thing or another. So if you are joining us live on YouTube, you'll get to see a couple of recordings going. And if you want to know all about that, just follow Jose Noya Inspiration Nation on YouTube. Hit subscribe. It will tell you when we're going live. Normally you can get him on TikTok as well, but he is the one who's away and he controls the TikTok, so we are not there this week. We're continuing with our theme of quotes. I've got one for you this week, Ryan, to start us off. And
Yep.
Joe would be proud. This comes from Robin Sharma. Joe's a big fan of Robin Sharma. And the quote is, as you move outside your comfort zone, what was once the unknown and frightening becomes your new normal.
Yeah.
And I like this. And I specifically started looking for quotes around comfort zones. And I honed in on this one because obviously Joe's mentioned this person a lot. Um, it's off a conversation I actually had with someone at work today who said they were feeling a bit uncomfortable and unsure in what they were doing, but they'd read a similar sort of quote saying that when you're in those uncomfortable spaces, that's where you start to grow, that's where you feel growth, that's where you start to change. So it's actually a good pace, and I kind of encouraged them and said, yeah, absolutely lean into that, and it just got me thinking about it a bit as well because it's so easy to slide into a comfort zone and stay within that safe space and do what you know and almost switch into autopilot, I guess, a lot of times with things. And I think I've over the last few years had moments with this where I've got into a comfortable space and always been like, oh, I can enjoy this ride of being here. But then I think me being me, I then start to feel the time or the brain capacity or whatever that is with new things to do and start pushing and pushing and pushing again. And it's not just that it completely comes naturally. I sometimes have to be like, right, now I do want to do this, so what do I have to do to make it happen? And you get into that uncomfortable space again, I suppose. And I've done it, as you know, Ryan, for people out listening won't, I started in a new role in work just over a year. I'm looking for the date on one of my 20 screens here, just over a year and a half ago. And I remember when I went into that, it was very different. The infrastructure, how it works, how that sort of world works, the roles in it, everything was completely alien. And I remember almost like having a conversation with myself in my head to say, look, just go with this, soak up the knowledge. 6 months from now, you're feeling a lot more comfortable. A year from now, you're probably comfortable enough to start thinking, oh, this is good, but maybe I'd do it this way, maybe I'd do it this way, start putting my own stamp on it. And that's exactly what happened, because that is what happens to anyone when they push themselves in a new space. You go through that sort of cycle, which, coming back to the quote, is the fact that actually after time, that thing that's uncomfortable becomes your new norm, and you have to start pushing out that ceiling again for what's uncomfortable and make that your new norm, and keep, I don't know, climbing the stairs, going up the ladder, going in that cycle, whatever analogy you want to use for it. But I just think it's something, being able to overcome that first step where it all feels new and frightening and know that that's a temporary state, I think is the strength and the message that I kind of wanted to portray today.
Yeah.
Don't know what
I think
your thoughts are in that space.
we've spoken loads on the podcast before about comfort zones and getting out of them and kind of finding new things about yourself that perhaps you didn't know before and all types of things along those lines. And I think uh, it's really easy to sit or lay in your bed with your covers up to your neck and live your comfortable life, but um, you also experience so much more when you step outside of that and you expand so much more into yourself. Um, People often go traveling to go and find themselves, which is a really loose statement that people use. But I think that's similarly comparable to this. I think they step themselves out of the comfortable routine of life of going to college, university, and then getting a job, and then settling down, etc. And they go and expel some of that um, adventurousness and go and try and maybe scare themselves or do something that kind of shows them who they kind of are and who they can be. And I think that's um, what we can all do as people, not just go traveling. That's not the only example, but we can all find ways to do that. And some people stepping outside of their comfort zone might be um, something really minor. or for other people that might not be enough, and they might want to do something massive. But as long as you're testing your own boundaries, it doesn't matter who it's comparable to or what it's comparable to, as long as you feel as though you've stepped outside of that comfort zone and um, look to improve your own life, I guess.
Yeah, I think the size of those things is a really good point. We talked before in the past of saying I have now largely overcome, but I used a great point of reference for me always used to be the barbers, didn't it? With the uncomfortableness of sitting in that confined
Yeah,
space, small talk, which is not my forte, and how I didn't. And in fact, since that time, there's a few people I've spoke to, and I am far from the only person who feels this sort of uncomfortableness with it, which actually is quite reassuring for me. But I think through talking along on here, I kind of got past that now, and and I think it quite often when I'm in the chair, I'm like, right, just that was me illustrating sitting in the chair there, just in case people didn't know what sitting in the chair was. Um, and I'm consciously say, right, sit in the uncomfortable space, be okay with the silence. And actually, sometimes there is a bit of small talk, sometimes there isn't, but I'm good with that. And actually, when I don't try and force it and I don't worry about it and I just sit in it, nothing bad happens. It's all good.
no,
Everything's
yeah,
fine. And that's now become more of a comfortable place for me, which, you know, your illustration of small things, that's really minor. Some people might be like, why is that even something you'd even think about? But it's all different things to different people. And I really like the travelling analogy you put on it as well. Actually, by coincidence, as a reference start, there's holidays going on left, right, centre. So going off with the family to Croatia next week, to a place we went to last year. But last year was the first time we went there, so it's a brand new place, and you know what it's like when you know very well, Ryan, because you've done it a few times recently. But you get somewhere that's brand new, you're completely unacclimatized, you don't know where anything is, you don't know the lay of the land. Every time you go somewhere new, it seems like it's miles away, even if it's just around the corner, because you don't know where you're going. And
yeah,
then you get familiar and you acclimatise yourself. And in fact, we really liked where we were, so we decided we're going to go back again next year, which is now next week.
yeah.
And yesterday we were flicking through the TV and we were just looking for something light and easy to watch before bed. And we happened across, I don't know if you've seen a show, Travel Man with Richard Adewaye. I can never pronounce his surname properly, but a comedian who's in the IT crowd and does a lot of talking head stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's where he goes off travelling. And Dubrovnik, which is where we're going, was where he was. And as he's walking around, we're like, oh, we were there. And I knew where he was. And I like having like maps in my head where I know where somewhere is and how it fits in the place. And I knew everywhere he was
yeah,
because that's now become familiar and comfortable. And actually, when we go there now, we can expand that and go a bit further out. And I think for me, I remember when I was, I'm going to say 15, 16 maybe, working in my first job and talking with people who moved around a lot and went new places and talked about loving going somewhere new and exploring it. And at the time, to me, that was worst idea. I was like, no, I know where I am here. I know where everything is. Why would I want to go somewhere new? Whereas
yeah,
now, I love doing that and completely changed that in my personality. But I think that's where I took myself from that real, not conscious, but comfort zone person and just completely, I think as other things in my life have changed and, you know, we talked about things on the podcast, there's not that need to cling to the comfortable. I'm a lot more happy putting myself out there, knowing that it's a good thing, not a bad thing, and you normally get great experiences from it.
yeah, yeah. No, you can only do so much. You know, there's going outside your comfort zone, and then there's moving your entire family to Australia. You know, so
Yes.
taking the right steps and taking the things that make sense to you, obviously work. You know, there are some people out there that would say, "Well, you went to Dubrovnik once, you don't need to go again. You know, go further, go somewhere new." But you know, you're still expanding that comfort zone push by exploring more of an area that you found
That's it.
that you and your family both enjoy
We probably did half of what we wanted to do when we were there, so we go back and do the rest. But then it will be right. That's done now. Let's do something else. Let's
somewhere
widen that
else.
net. And even through work, I mean, I grew up in one town. I lived in that one town until I was in my mid-20s. I knew nothing else really. And
Yeah,
then through, as you know, there was a time pre-COVID where I travel a lot for my job, and actually my zone of comfort, if you like, places that I went to and I'd know. And you know when you somewhere you live or you associate with gets mentioned on the news and you see somewhere and you get that feeling of, oh, I know that place, or
I
I've
know
got
where
an
that place is.
association with that. And I had a huge list of them because of all the places I'd go and I spend so much time in. And
Yeah,
it kind of organically, but it was, like you said, it was slow incremental change, and suddenly it was just like, oh, my world has become a lot bigger and I didn't even really notice it just by going through
yeah,
those little small changes. and keep being comfortable. And I don't think it was even comfortable. I don't think I had a choice at the time. Not in a bad way. I just didn't realise it. It was just a necessity. And
Yeah.
suddenly that comfort zone started pushing and pushing. And what was uncomfortable did become the new norm.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like it pushing outside your comfort zone doesn't have to be this big ordeal. It doesn't have to be this huge step. It's just not doing something that's the same as you always do all the time. And as you've just kind of alluded to, work kind of meant that you needed to go to new locations or new places, and that's absolutely fine. You didn't even think that it was a brand new place probably until you pulled up in a car park and was like, now where do I go?
Yeah.
And even then, you're so focused on getting to where you need to be to do your job that you don't even think or realize that you're in somewhere totally new. And then once you'd been there 6 or 7 times, you knew exactly where the Tesco nearest to you was, and knew
That's
exactly where
it.
to go for a coffee. And
It was so long
that's
ago, Ryan. I have to say, I used to print out my AA route map off my computer because Google Maps was not a thing, and a sat nav cost you about 500 quid at the time.
an AA route planner. I'm not sure I've heard that for about 15 years. That tells you how long it's been. Um, but yeah, it doesn't have to be this huge ordeal to go outside your comfort zone. It can just be as part of your um, normal life. It's just because it's something that you need to do because of work or because of a necessity doesn't mean it isn't outside of your comfort zone, and it isn't something to therefore um, look back on and kind of be appreciative of what you have done with it.
And I think that pushing my boundaries has been a really important thing to me. So yeah, I guess that's why I kind of wanted to pick a quote like that, and that's why I think I gravitated to this one as well, because I just think it's not a once and done. You just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, and you just keep expanding those boundaries. As I like using the word at the moment, incrementally. One of the project words I've picked up in the work I'm doing at the moment.
He's become a project nerd.
I would say I object to the word nerd, but I absolutely don't in any way, shape, or form. Right, so a little bit of shilling before we get away. Go on our ways,
Sure.
Ryan. If you like what we're doing, if you support Inspiration Nation, head over to Twitter, follow us at Listen to IN, listen TOIN, like, retweet, comment on our stuff, helps get our footprint out there, helps get us noticed. The best way to help us is to try and beat those algorithms. So wherever you are, podcast platform, YouTube, somewhere in between, subscribe, leave a review. All those things help us grow, get the message out there, and tell friends and family. Organic growth really helps us. So we're seeing a lot of trawling through the archives at the moment. Tells us people are getting on board now, going back through. The more of that we see, the better it's for us and what we're doing. And of course, head over to inspirationnation.org.uk for everything to do with the podcast. Get yourself an Inspiration Nation mug. Speaking of Inspiration Nation mugs, Ryan, have you got anything as a takeaway for today?
That's unbelievably harsh. Um, yes, I would say that as I kind of alluded to earlier, it doesn't have to be a huge grand gesture to push yourself outside your comfort zone. Small steps, things you may already be doing that you're not noticing, are also ways to push yourself out your comfort zone and find out new things about yourself. Don't be afraid to push into those.
Oh, I like that. I like that. The same for me as well. The just a continuing improvement. The fact that it's always a journey and you're always going to be on it, and that is a good thing. Keep it exciting. Keep it new. That's what I'm going to go with. Right, we thank everyone out there in Listerland. We will be back next week, and if you're over us on YouTube, we'll be back in literally like 5 minutes. So stick with us. I'll count us down. 3, 2, 1. Inspiration Nation.
Appreciation.
Catch you guys
Catch
later.
you guys later.
Recording stopped.
Recording.